Hello, chefs. This is Chef's PSA podcast. I'm your host, André Natera. On today's episode, we're going to talk about what the real sacrifice is when deciding to become a chef. Stay tuned. Now, before we get into it, let me give you a brief update. Later this week, so if you happen to be listening to this the last week of August, I'll be doing a book signing in El Paso, Texas, part of El Paso Family Meal. Follow the El Paso Family Meal Instagram page, and you can find out more. You can go to the dinner, you can buy tickets. It's taking place August 28th at the Culinary Institute by Southwest University. So if you happen to be in El Paso, Texas, and you want to get one of your books signed, or you want to come to the dinner that we're putting on later that evening, make sure you swing by, say hello, get your book signed. I'm going to be doing a presentation on why the world needs chefs today more than ever. So you don't want to miss that if you happen to be in the area. For those of you that are waiting for the book update, the audiobook version of Bad Cooks Everywhere is available. Go get it. The Spanish version of it is also out. And if you're looking for the Spanish audiobook of Culinary Leadership Fundamentals, it is also available now. Strangely enough, it's become a bestseller, the Spanish version. I don't know why, but the Spanish version of Culinary Leadership Fundamentals is now an Amazon bestseller. I thought that was pretty cool. Best-selling author 3 times over. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And if you're listening on Spotify or anywhere else, make sure you leave 5 stars. Nothing less than 5 stars, because only good people leave 5 stars. Bad people, nah. Bad people apparently don't do anything. They listen to every single episode and they never leave 5 stars, even though it takes you like 1 second. Bad people do that. Anyway, we digress. What were we talking about? The price of the apron, the sacrifices that it takes to become a chef. Today, when I was coming up with my chef's PSA for the day, I did a little cartoon meme, and it was 2 people talking, and one person says to the other, "You're the best home cook I know. You should become a chef and open up a restaurant," which is like the worst advice I would give to anyone, that if you enjoy cooking at home, don't be a chef, because you might not like it once you get into it, right? There's that old expression, just because you make something good at home doesn't mean it makes a good restaurant. You're surrounded by your fan base at home that everyone's going to tell you it's great. And then you go open up a restaurant, maybe don't put $1 million down because you make a good casserole. A lot of people decide to become chefs without fully understanding what it really means to become one. Whether you're in high school right now and you're thinking about becoming a chef, or you're still early in your career. Maybe you're thinking of changing careers because you think you want to become a chef. I think there's a lot of myths out there of what this industry is and what it's really like. And I don't want to glorify a chef life by any means, because hard is hard, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a chef, whether you're an entrepreneur. Difficult is difficult. Being a chef is not exceptionally more difficult than some of those other industries. It is a hard industry. And what makes it uniquely hard is how difficult it is physically and mentally. And a lot of times when you're getting into it early on in your career, that the pay is not there. And then you have to think about all the things that you're giving up externally that aren't necessarily involved with the business. Now, I was a chef for 27 years, and I had a love-hate relationship with being a chef because I loved it. I loved being a chef. I loved the creative process. I loved being in the kitchen around other chefs and cooking and having a great service. And that's the whole reason I chef's PSA. But there was also a lot that it took away from me. And really what it takes away from is time to enjoy the things outside of the kitchen. Because a lot of times when you're a chef, it becomes all-consuming. I would go through periods of life where I couldn't hold a conversation with you, with a civilian, with a normal person, if it wasn't about food. If we weren't going to talk about food, I didn't want to talk at all, because I was so immersed in what I did. I wanted nothing more than to be a great chef, and I was consuming every bit of chef content that I could. Back then it was books, TV shows, and my social circle of friends was all chefs. So all we talked about was chef things. When you'd introduce an outsider into the conversation, it was like they were lost. I couldn't relate to them. Being a chef, you kind of live in your own little bubble world where everyone else kind of thinks the same, acts the same. We all have the same opinions about food, and we could talk about it at length because we're passionate about it. But there's some difficulty when you go into the civilian world and they want to talk about anything other than being a chef, and you struggle with it. I know I did. I really had to immerse myself into different subjects so I could carry a conversation, because I did recognize that it was a weakness. People want to jump into this industry because it looks fun. They enjoy the creative process. They enjoy cooking at home. When you go to culinary school, every day is new and exciting because you don't know much and you're learning something new every single day. And your learning curve is just skyrocketing. And then you get into the real world and you get frustrated and you go up to your chef and you say, "Can I move stations? I don't feel like I'm learning anymore." But you're not even good at your station yet. You're still viewing this as a learning opportunity. You're not yet viewing it as the career choice that you've made, and your skills aren't necessarily good enough to move to the next station. You might have learned how to make the salad already or plate the dessert or whatever happens to be on your station, but you haven't mastered it. You know how to do it, but you haven't mastered it. Mastery comes from doing something thousands of times to the point where you do it when you're not even thinking anymore. And so when you get into this because you only want to learn, sometimes it's a bit of a shock when you get into the real world because you feel like your learning stops or slows down significantly. And then you realize some of the realities of becoming a chef. It's long hours. Now, maybe it's not long hours. A lot of places are 8 hours a day and they don't allow overtime. But 8 hours a day on your feet, bending, turning, twisting, in the walk-in, in the freezer, moving heavy boxes, putting away produce, chopping, physically demanding, hot kitchen, mentally demanding, chaotic, tickets coming in. You hear the sound of the printer when you go to sleep. You dream about it. You hear the oven beeping. You hear the timer going off when you're at work and when you're not at work. All of a sudden, those 8 hours feel a lot longer. 8 hours typing on a keyboard feels much different than 8 hours on the saute station. So there's this physicality that goes with being a chef that a lot of people don't really understand. Your feet hurt, and they hurt forever. I've been retired for a few years and my feet still hurt, and it gets worse. Invest in good shoes. Make sure you're taking care of your feet. When you're a cook, the mental strain comes from the amount of prep that you have to do, and you might not even be that proficient at it. And so you're dealing with people that are years ahead of you in experience and expect you to work at their level. And so you start to feel a little bit insecure. You start to feel the pressure of the other people. And it creates a little bit of a pressure cooker environment because the people also that you're working with want you to be faster. They understand that you're green, but they don't have time for it because they need to get their job done. It causes people to be a little bit more curt. Maybe what you would consider a little bit mean, but they just want to get their station done, right? We all start as nice people when we go into the kitchen. Sometimes the environment brings something else out in us that we didn't know existed, right? And that's when you're just starting. When you move up, you're a sous chef, you're going to work a little bit more. When you're the executive chef or the chef de cuisine, you're going to work a little bit more. So now those physical hours become longer, right? That's not for everyone. There's days when I was a chef where I'd wake up and it was dark, and I'd go home and it was dark, and I could go months like that. There's people that call off in the kitchen, and then someone has to pick up the slack, right? There's no more bodies. So guess what? You're doing two stations and you're expected to perform at the same level. You don't get an award. No one pats you on the back and says, hey, good job, you did two stations. No, we all have to do that. It's difficult. It's hard. And you start thinking to yourself, when I move into the next position, it'll get easier. You think when you're a cook, when I'm sous chef, it'll get easier. When you're the sous chef, you think when I'm the chef de cuisine, when I'm the executive chef, it gets easier. Fact of the matter is, it doesn't get easier. You might trade in a little bit of the physical stress for mental stress. The mental stress starts to accumulate more and more the higher up you go the ladder, right? Because now you share the problems with everybody. What was your problem, your station, is now their station, your problem when you oversee them. You have the burden of being a chef. The financial pressures. Is your food cost in line? Is your labor cost in line? The reservations are light. Not enough people are coming in. You got a bad review in the paper. You got a bad review on Yelp. It affects your business the next day. Owners are coming to you every day and saying, food cost is not in line. Revenues are not where they need to be. Maybe you need to change the menu. Maybe we need to open up brunch. You have this constant stress of being a chef because you almost have this lingering feeling in the back of your mind that you're going to lose your job at any moment if things don't turn around. Or you're the complete opposite. You think everything's going well and you have no idea that your head's on the chopping block. I've been in rooms where we're talking about we're going to let this person go or we're going to let that person go, and they have no idea. And they're completely oblivious to the fact that they're not doing a good job, even though we've told them. They don't read the writing on the wall. As a chef, you also face challenges at home with family and friends, not spending enough time with them. Your schedule might not be consistent. You miss out on important dates because you compromise with your workplace, whether that's a wedding, your best friend's getting married, your kid's soccer game, seeing a parent or a loved one. You miss a lot of that because you think they need me in the kitchen. You're so close to it, you don't see what's important. It's hard to maintain friendships, especially if they're not in the industry. What I notice is that most of your social circle starts to become other people in the industry, other chefs that you see at food festivals and whatnot. They become your close friends. That's your network. Some of the friends that are non-chefs, you don't see them as much. Their life moves on. When you're working the line, they're at the beach having fun. And then, of course, there's the health issues that you may face. Mental health, right? This industry pushes you, and you have to find a way to cope with the stress. And those vices look extremely tempting sometimes. And if you work in a restaurant, a lot of those vices are readily available, right? Maybe you eat too much, maybe you drink too much. Guess what? You work in a place that there's nothing but eat and drink all around you. And then there's assholes everywhere. You might have an asshole boss, colleague, coworker. And what you realize is you go to the next place and they're still there. Their face changes, the name changes, still the same jerk. You can't escape them. And it's not that our industry is particular to hiring assholes, because bad people are everywhere. They're in every industry. There's bad lawyers, bad doctors, bad salespeople. They're everywhere. The difference is you work with more of them because you have larger teams and you're working in teams constantly. If you were working in an area where it's just you and one other person, well, the likelihood is now 50-50. But now you're working with 10 other people. Well, all you need is one person out of the 10 to be a jerk, and you think the whole kitchen's bad, right? The kitchen becomes toxic because of one person, even though it is only one person out of 10. The team aspect really changes things. And then you give it your all. You've given up time with friends and family. You've given up a certain portion of your health. Your knees hurt, your back hurts, your feet hurt. You're losing a little bit of your hair. You haven't slept well, and then your restaurant closes, or you don't get the award that you are working towards, or you lose your job only to get replaced by someone who will do it for a little less money. It's a very tough industry. Maybe your partner leaves you because you're putting work before them, right? And I didn't do this episode because I wanted everyone to get down on being a chef, because that's really not the point of this. But I did want to paint a picture of what sometimes happens that a lot of people don't tell you. When you're signing up for culinary school, listen to this episode, right? Make sure you really want to do this, because it is an extremely rewarding job. You get to eat great food. You make some of the best friends, right? Chefs are built different. We have great senses of humor. We tell good jokes. We're the person you want in the foxhole with you. The creative environment is unlike anything else. And if you're an adrenaline junkie, a busy restaurant is a good place for you, right? You fit in. That's the other thing about kitchens, is you do fit in, because everyone's welcome in a kitchen, right? There's people from all over the world, all sorts of personalities. You could have someone from an extremely wealthy background working the line next to an immigrant, and they become best friends during that time. You could have someone that's just out of prison cooking with an 18-year-old line cook just out of culinary school, and they need each other and they have each other's back. So it's a really beautiful thing when you become a chef and you start surrounding yourself with some of these people. Some of the best friends I've made for life are in the kitchen. Let's talk some strategies on how to deal with this. When it comes to my mental health, I often get asked the question is, what am I doing about it as a cook? I usually walk big circles around this subject because I think everyone's unique and I'm not a mental health expert. So it's hard for me to speak on the subject. But here's what I do for myself. One is I meditate daily. I have some sort of breathwork practice that I recommend that people do. It helps me learn how to calm my mind and deal with stressful environments, right? I've been meditating for years, and it's probably the one thing that I would say has helped me out the most when it comes to working in stressful kitchens. I've learned to take on other interests outside of work, so I don't think about just cooking all the time. I exercise. Even though my body has damage from working in kitchens, I think it could be a lot worse if I didn't exercise. Try to eat healthy, drink lots of water, turn your phone off, right? Set boundaries with your workplace employer. People respect boundaries, and I think that's something that doesn't get discussed enough. Because I know when I was a chef, sure, you constantly push the line a little bit, like, hey, can you work this day? Can you work that day? I know it's normally your day off, but can you come in? But if you have firm boundaries, eventually people don't ask you. They know that person can't work that day. That person will not give up their Saturday. That person will not miss whatever that event is, right? And so they won't ask you and they won't push you on it. But if they sense a little bend in you, they will find that point where they could push you, where you agree to do it is in their best interest. Establish boundaries. The other thing is, don't work in an environment that's not healthy for you or that's not the right fit, right? If you're in an environment where you don't feel welcome and it's just not for you, there's no shame in leaving. I think a lot of people stay in a job too long that they don't like, thinking that they shouldn't leave for some reason. I promise you, nothing's going to happen if you leave. I've been in this business a long time. People leave jobs every single day. You'll forget about it. They might remember for about a week, they'll move on, and so will you. If it's not the right fit, there's no shame in leaving. If anything, you're doing yourself and them a favor, because maybe it wasn't the right fit for them either. When it comes to time with friends and family, here's what I'll tell you. And this took me a very long time to figure out. At one point, I was looking back at all the awards I'd received as a chef and all the highs and all the great moments and the great services that I've had. And I thought to myself, what I wouldn't do to have that one Christmas at home with my family or with whoever, right? I would trade any of that to have that moment back. There isn't an award or a service that is more important than something that's really important in your outside life, whether that's your wife and kids, whether that's your parent, that's your best friend's wedding. There are going to be things in your life that are more important than service or the award, right? You don't get that time back. Make the right decision, as tough as it is. And I know I say this a lot on Chef's PSA, is work in the type of kitchen that you'd like to run eventually. And I think that's really important. especially early in your career. Because if you get in that type of kitchen that you want to run one day, and you might realize, I don't want to run that kitchen. That's not for me. I don't want to be in this type of kitchen because it requires too much of a sacrifice that I'm willing to give up. Then don't. But you need to find that out early in your career. And one of the last things I'll say when it comes to the sacrifices of being a chef, and this being a chef's podcast, it almost is a little bit difficult for me to say this because I do think that we need more chefs in the industry. I do believe that we need to strengthen our bench strength in the industry. We need more chefs. We need more leaders. We need to fix the culture. That's why a chef's PSA. But I also think we need to let people go when this is not the right fit for them and they're not happy. If you're not happy in this business, there's nothing wrong with walking away and finding a business where you will be happy. And the sooner you figure that out, the sooner you can let go of that anger and resentment. It's not for everybody, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't fault anyone for not loving this business. I mean, we're cooking food, right? You can't fault someone because they don't like cooking food that much as you do. Like, it's crazy that we shame people when they want to leave the business. Someone asked me the other day about burnout, and I talk about this a little bit in the last episode I did with a culinary student panel. I'm a little bit reluctant to talk about burnout, but here's my thoughts. I think there's really two types of burnout in most cases, in my opinion. It's physical burnout or it's mental burnout. But I think a lot of the burnout just attributes to not liking your job. Because you could take the situation where someone's working 20 hours a week, but they don't like their boss, and they don't like their coworkers, and they don't like the food that they're cooking, and it's dirty, and it's not a good environment. And after 20 hours, they're burnt out because it's so stressful and so chaotic in that environment that 20 hours cause them to burn out. You take another person who's working 80 hours a week, but they have a great chef, they have a great team, everyone's positive, they're motivated, they're inspired, they're creative, they're winning, their best friends are in the kitchen with them. It might be difficult to get them to go home because they always want to be at work. They're not burned out, even though they're working more than the other person, hours-wise. So then I would ask the question, are you burned out, or is it that you just don't like the job? And I would think that in a lot of cases, you just don't like the job. Now, you can be physically burned out and you can be mentally burned out. And the chaos in the kitchen is a good recipe for mental burnout. But before you attribute it to burnout, I would say, ask yourself this question. Do you like the job? And if the answer is yes, you do love the job, then you might be burned out. But if the answer is I don't like the job, it might not be burnout. It just might be time for you to leave. Hope that wasn't too much of a Debbie Downer. Anyway, if you want to support the show, you know what to do. Go to chefspsa.com. You get all the books, Culinary Leadership Fundamentals, Bad Cooks Everywhere, Bad Soup, Good Chef, Line Cook Survival Manual, Kitchen Art of War, as well as several free ebooks, including 100 Basic Recipes, Food Cost Mastery, A Critical Path to Opening Up a Restaurant, and a Culinary Dictionary. If you're new to the industry and you don't know what to say, you don't know the words, this is going to teach you the slang. If you want exclusive access and early access to podcasts, sign up for my Substack. I'll link it in the show notes. I think as of this week, I have about 3 or 4 episodes up, including an interview with Chef John Tazar, Chef Robert Saladicki, Fermin Yunez, Philip Spear. Those are already out on Substack. They'll be out later for normal Chef's PSA. Make sure you leave 5 stars, nothing less than 5 stars. Like and subscribe. We'll see you next week. Hit the porno music.
Yo, it's André in the kitchen, mixing, dropping chef knowledge, no fiction, stirring up the beats, heating up the session. Listen close, class is in session.